Do you remember that song? I told you, like you told me, cash rules everything around me. Dollar, dollar, billion. I don't know if you guys remember that song. Singing dollar, dollar, billion. Dollar, dollar, billion. Okay. So that was a song. That was a song on money. Okay. Singing dollar, dollar, billion. So okay, as we invite people onto this thing, okay, onto this platform right now, I'll be singing dollar dollar billion. That's all I could sing in that song. I couldn't hear anything else. Okay, yeah, that's all I could hear from that little Wayne song. Okay, I couldn't hear anything else. Maybe too. I grew too. I spent too much farm or too much time on. I spent too much farm on a time. Right? I spent too much time on the farm and I grew up in the ghetto. So so no, no. I just couldn't hear most of those rap music words. Okay. To yeah, too rural, right? Too rural, too guashi, too low class. Okay. I was too low class to hear what they were saying in rap songs. But I could hear singing dollar dollar billion. That I could hear that part. I could hear that part, but I was never gonna be able to hear everything. Okay. So anyway, let's just post this right now. Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's ready. Singing dollar dollar billion. Dollar dollar billion. Okay, so anyway, guys, we're not gonna waste our time here. I just realized something last time. I realized that like we hadn't really gone into specific details about what happened with regards to the inflation in Zimbabwe. So I just want to go through that and let you know exactly, like in a little bit more detail. If you were not in Zimbabwe during the time of the great inflation and you watched my video, I think that you would miss out on a few details. And those details, I just want to put those details here. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. And I think the first few slides are going to explain that. So there is a previous video prior to the PSG Barcelona video. There's a video on the history of money and on the explanation of inflation. Okay, so this is just a third one that's just coming on to add to that part, because I think this is all important. And then interestingly, then we move away from money. Okay, or maybe I'll do one more on the role and value of money. No, I think we've already done that, so it's not really that important anymore. We understand the history of money. At least we understand how I understand the history of money, right? And my explanation of inflation. And this is all part of a one big broad strategy for me to contribute to what I think is the healthier road for Zimbabwe, right? Because I think that most of us who are from Zimbabwe don't really like to have to move away from where we grew up. But if things are not working the way you think they should, you move. Okay, you go where it rains, right? So we are nomads. Okay, we are nomads, especially those of us who are part who are not exactly Zulu. At least we are part of the Mtwagazi kingdom. We've got a little bit of that Khoisan blood in us. So we are nomads. Okay, we are nomads. We're not able to settle, so we go where it rains. So anyway, this is my contribution. I think this is, by go where it rains, it just means you go where it's most beneficial for you to live a healthy life and to be able to contribute in a positive manner to the world, right? So this is my contribution, because most people want to leave Zimbabwe. We want a situation where most people want to go to Zimbabwe because it's a beautiful place. The weather is fantastic, yes, but it can also be very bad. So at the moment, many people want to leave because it's not very conducive um, for the ordinary citizen. Okay, so I'm just going. So what so this series is my solution to Zimbabwe series, right? What I'm doing currently. Um, And I proposed that there were basically about 3 or 4 things that we needed to know, in my opinion, or to understand. In my opinion, these are the things I use to contribute to us being able to make Zimbabwe into a better place. So the first thing was money and its history. Like, you need to understand what money is and what its history is, right? And we've done that. And I just think it's very, very unfair that someone can actually go to school and learn about money and not know the history of money. That's sad. And I think what the world is doing is not right. People should actually leave school. If you are studying something to do with money, you should know the history of money. You should know why money changed from a certain form to what it is now. You should know that. I think that should be standard reading. But from when I did economics in uni, we didn't do that. And maybe we didn't need to do it, but when I did it, yeah, I guess maybe I wasn't going too deep, but I just think even if you're not going too deep, that's just a requirement, but we didn't do that. And I had to find that by myself. I think that's just not right. Anyway, so we've done the history of money, and that's what we're doing currently. And the next thing I think is understanding what poverty is, and the history of poverty, right? Um, and then after that, you want to understand the histories of the USA, the histories of communist countries. So you're talking China, USSR, but really what you're trying to get to here is the ideas behind those things, and the history of England, because those places are the places that made Zimbabwe into what Zimbabwe is currently, right? And of course, you might want to know African history as well, but your African history is not going to tell you the why the setup politically is like that, even though that's also important. We might get into that. We might get into that after a while. But I think that's the fourth thing. I just didn't write it down. But if you watch my first or second video, I did outline that those were the things that we needed to do. And like I said, we are right here at the moment. That's where we are. Okay, so we're doing money and its history. We're about to finish that part and get to other exciting things. Okay. And then now what we're going to do today, like I said, I'm going to add a few more details on the discussion on inflation. I'm going to give an example of what actually happened to me, how I spent my money when I was in Zimbabwe, because I got to live through that period. And it's very sad that I didn't write a journal, but I should have. I just wasn't wise enough. I just didn't realize that you need to document these things. And this is my message to all of us who want to contribute positively to Zimbabwe or wherever we are. It's pretty good to document what's happening and who said what and when. It's just good. It's a good practice, and when you need it, you can always access the information. If you don't, then someone's going to tell the story, and you won't be able to explain anything. Okay. So anyway, so the hyperinflation period in Zimbabwe. So you can see in this graph, we did cover this graph last time. You can see around 99, 2000, there was just this sharp spike in inflation. I think this is around the period where you've got that the government of Zimbabwe paid everyone who went to war. So if this is where the history of Zimbabwe matters, I guess. Zimbabwe was colonized by the British South Africa Company in behalf of the British government, right? And then it became part of the British Empire. So it was ruled by European descendants of Europeans in Zimbabwe, and some of them were just coming straight from England, and some of them were born in Zimbabwe. But at the end of the day, the people that are called white were the ones who were ruling in Zimbabwe. And so there was a war, and after that war, there was a war between the mostly indigenous people of Zimbabwe, not even indigenous, mostly Bantu people in Zimbabwe, and the Europeans fighting over who should rule the land that had been demarcated by the British to be one place and needing one ruler, right? So all those people who had participated in that war were then given money by the government So the war ended in 1980, and 20 years later, the government tried to pay everyone who participated in that war $50,000. And when they did that, the inflation rate just shot up, I think. And I think this is around this time here. And then the government tried to get on top of things, and then the inflation just kept skyrocketing and skyrocketing. It's just crazy. I think I'm not sure which bit is this one and what's the difference between this one and that one. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, we're just covering this from around here going up. And I just want to explain what happened. I'm not explaining in full detail the time micro causes of inflation. I'm just my video was concerned with this bit here. Okay, this big spike in the so from about 2005 2006, the big spike in inflation, right? So I'm gonna explain what happened. So if you want to know a greater in greater detail what happened, but I'm just explaining things the way I saw them, right? So this is not even going deeper into what was the Reserve Bank doing. This is just the way I saw things happening, and the way I understood things happening. So prices of things started going up so very quickly, like so crazy. Like prices of things were just shooting up, shooting up, shooting up. Price. So you wouldn't be able to say the price of a TV is $10 today, and tomorrow maybe you buy, and maybe next week you buy it for $10. When you come back next week, maybe the price of that TV would be $100. So that's a big increase in prices. Okay, so that's how prices were going. And I was just, how old was I then? I think I must have been 19, 20, somewhere there. Yeah, I wasn't very old. So I would just see prices going up, and it was just so quickly prices were going up. And so that graph is really a good reflection on what was happening there. So in the shops, the prices of things were being changed very quickly. Every time they'd be just going in there, changing the price of things, changing the price of things, right? So I'm gonna go a little bit more into detail of what I did during that time. So I'm going down memory lane. Okay, so we're trying to open the old scrolls and see what they have to tell us what happened then. Okay, I remember when I was in Form 1, 1998, I was 13 years old, and I was going to you to Form 1. Form 1 is like year 8 in Australia, I think, or year 7, whatever, one of those two. But anyway, that's the beginning of high school in Zimbabwe. And I remember laughing at people from another country. There's another country called Zambia, okay, which is different from Zimbabwe, right? But that country is just like north of Zimbabwe. We share borders, right? Um, and in 1998, we were laughing at students from Zambia um, because they used to buy Coca-Cola at 7,000 kwacha. 7,000 kwacha. Kwacha is that's the name of the Zambian currency, kwacha. I don't know if I'm spelling it correctly, but we had these stories that they were buying bread at 7,000 kwacha and all these things, and we were laughing because we were saying, how can you buy bread for $7,000? Well, for 7,000 kwacha, this is just crazy. We were laughing in 1998. We were laughing at that. I remember clearly laughing at Zambians for that. And by the time I was Form 5, within 4 years, Zimbabwe had shot way past the Zambian inflation rate, and we were buying Coca-Cola at like $20,000, $30,000. So it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So don't laugh at other people's wounds, right? I remember paying my school fees. Okay, let me give you an example of how bad this inflation was. So I'm just giving you examples of things that were happening for me. My fees, my mom would give, when I was now in uni, my mom would give me 1,000 South African rands. So in South Africa, they use rands. So if you go back to my previous video, you'll see that. But anyway, in South Africa, they use rands, and using those rands, I would go to school with the 1,000 rands in my hands, and I was supposed to change the 1,000 rands so that so that I pay so that I pay my fees. But what I did in the end was I would hold on to the 1,000 rands, for like maybe 2 weeks, because you had a grace period to pay your school fees. So I'd hold on to it for 2 weeks, and then I would change it after 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I would be able to pay my school fees. If you just give me 2 seconds, guys, I'll just get my wife to help me out here. I'm dancing. Ngicela charge your laptop. Natato. Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. This is just horrible. Anyway, my laptop might switch off, so I'm kind of worried that this laptop might switch off. So I don't know. I wish I had a video that I could play for you while you're waiting for this. So just skip for about a minute. Give me a minute, and then skip. I see you charging. You phone charging. Not late. Yeah. Oh, okay. Here, nyabonga tato. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so that was crazy. I would hold on to the money for that long, and then use that money to, then after about 2 weeks I would go and change it, and I would only have to pay my fees at 500 rands instead of 1,000 rands, and then I'd pocket the other 500 rands. Mom, don't watch this video, okay? Don't watch this video, mom. That's what was happening. Was the inflation? Everybody was learning to be a thief at that time. And maybe I actually should call my mom and apologize for this, because I was stealing, wasn't it? Because I didn't really tell her that was what I was doing. I apologize. It's too late to apologize. It's too late. Sorry, guys. I'm just needing to rearrange this table so we can make sure this thing doesn't switch off while we're working. Yeah. So I was keeping all this money for 2 weeks at a time, so I can pay my school fees cheaper and have 500 rands extra in my pocket, because the school fees would not be changed. Okay, so the school fees would not rise. So it was really quite silly what they were doing. They were actually allowing us to pay insufficient amounts of money. They should have just said, look, we're only accepting foreign currency as school fees. And then I remember when I started working, I was working at Print Originators. That's the job. I went for that job as my placement, and they were paying me as part of the placement and after my placement, or as we call it in Zimbabwe. In Australia, they call it placement when you go to uni and then you spend some time in the industry practicing your job as part of your learning. They call it placement. In Zimbabwe, we call it attachment, right? So I went to work for a company called Print Originators. It was a printing company. They used to give me money. And with the money they used to give me, I would try and go and get some. I'd get the money, and I would think maybe I'm gonna buy something. I'd get like maybe, let's say, $4 or $5 million that month. Maybe they say your salary is $5 million, and you think, oh yeah, I've got heaps of money, right? They put $5 million in your bank account. By the time it's halfway through that month, it would cost you $5 million to go to work in 2 weeks. It would be 5 minutes. So you would be paying money to go to work, essentially. So many people were now saying, like, people go to work to steal, like, because it was not profitable to be going to work, because just going to work and getting paid was not enough. And the rate at which your pay was going up was not going to match the rate at which the inflation was going up, because no one can know how much the inflation is going to be the next weeks or next year. So your workplace kind of assumes that prices will remain relatively stable, and then they say, oh yeah, we'll give you $20 million this year. But what they don't know is $20 million a month. But what they don't know is within a month, that $20 million is going to be like $100 million. That $20 million is going to be is not going to be enough, because maybe it will cost you $20 million just to get to work. So yeah, so it was very hard. I remember that part. So I just used to take my money. Look, I feel bad, but I did it. I used to take my money and go and watch soccer instead. Yep, you can see that my brain wasn't very working very well. Okay, so I would take the money and go and watch soccer instead. I should have had a heart for my mom. I didn't. I should have had a heart for my mom, but I didn't. And I apologize for that. Um, I actually should call her, really, guys. I really should call her and say, "Look, mom, I am absolutely sorry. I was just, yeah, I'm sorry, but for all the way I blew that money without thinking." Yeah. Anyway, and I remember, like when my mom would come, and I had to go and buy petrol. I would go to a petrol station because there was no petrol, so people would form a queue eh, because there would be shortages, right? So if there was one place where there was going to be petrol, everyone would go there and park their car, anticipating that there is going to be petrol at that station tomorrow. So the day before, people would be parking their cars because they had a rumor that petrol was coming there. And you'd just see a long queue of cars, right? And I remember sleeping in a fuel queue at night just so I can put petrol in the car the next day. That's how bad it was, right? And there was these food shortages. People couldn't get rice, just basic stuff. Millie meal is polenta, okay? Millie meal is polenta. People couldn't get polenta. People couldn't get um uh cooking oil. People couldn't get sugar. People couldn't get salt. You had to know someone to get these basic things. Bread, you needed to know someone in order to have access to bread. This is how terrible it was. And the bread, when it came, would just be gone as quickly as it appeared on the market, because people wanted it. There wasn't enough money for it, and there wasn't enough bread on around, so it was all crazy, right? um it was so bad when it came to groceries. People ended up having to drive or catch a bus and go to South Africa so they can buy groceries. Just let that like sink into your head. I remember once we actually nearly had a terrible accident in the car because we drove from Harare to Beitbridge, or Messina. No, we drove from Harare to Messina in South Africa, which is about, I think, 500, 600 kilometers or whatever it was. A lot of traveling, just driving there to buy groceries. Can you imagine driving 600 kilometers or 800? No, because it's a return. That's 1,000 kilometers. It's a return trip, right? That's about 1,000 kilometers. Can you imagine driving 1,000 kilometers just to get bread, or just to go and buy groceries for the month, because it's not as effective as buying your groceries in Zimbabwe, right? Can you imagine driving 1,000 kilometers to do groceries, right? Let's actually calculate how many kilometers it is from Beitbridge to from Beitbridge to Beitbridge to so from Harare to Messina. Harare to let me write this down and I'll tell you the Harare to Messina. I'm just Googling here and I'll let you know in 2 seconds, okay? Harare to Messina is, okay, it's just telling me flights. Okay, let me say kilometers. Okay, here it is. Harare to Messina by car. 600 kilometers. So it's a 1,200 kilometer trip. So can you imagine driving 600 kilometers to buy groceries and 600 kilometers back home just so you can have groceries for the month? It's unbelievable, right? Yeah. So that's what people were doing, right? Some people would go to South Africa, Botswana, different places, but basically everyone was crossing borders to get food. Unbelievable. And lots, and I remember this clearly. I remember going to major ports, like maybe it could be where buses get there, or at the airport. Not really at the airport. You wouldn't see too many people at the airport. They were quite good with that. But maybe at the train station, where the bus station I'm not sure what happened there. 1212. Oh, I'm so sorry if the feed cut out. It's not I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just the system just went crazy. Um, the system just went crazy for some reason. I don't know what happened, but the system just went crazy, and we've been cut off for a little while. Conspiracy, you know. Um, Low system resources may affect your audio quality. Try closing some applications to improve your performance. Okay, let me see if I can close some apps here, guys. So maybe that will work if we do that. Yeah, so I'm just trying to fix, guys, so we can continue. This is so bad. Anyway, let's just go back a bit. Okay. Yeah, so we were just here talking about how I slept in fewer queues and the food shortages, and just seeing all these people, informal money traders. Okay, you would find people standing on the street offering to change money for you instead of you going to the bank. You know, when you go to another country, you go to the bank and you change your currency at the bank. There's official things, but in Zimbabwe, you are literally talking to people on the street and asking them for help to change your money, so they could change your money illegally in the street. Yeah, they could change your money illegally in the street, and that was pretty bad. Um, and then on the other side as well, so because the prices kept going up, um, you'd see all these bricks and piles of money that people were holding and carrying. Oh, looks like maybe my Zoom is stopped. Is that what's happening here? Let's see. No, it hasn't stopped. I'm still live streaming according to this. But maybe I'm not sharing screen. Okay, let me share screen. Okay, yeah, okay, we're back again to sharing screen. Yeah, so I was saying sharing all this stuff we've talked about. Yeah, and I'm saying there were people, informal money traders on the street who would be carrying bags of money in their cars, and they would be swapping Zim dollars for foreign currency, and you'd have to use them because the government had a law that things in Zimbabwe were supposed to be sold in Zim dollars. So it made it very difficult, and it made lots of money for these people. So if you want to understand a bit more about that, you can go to the previous video. And then the other, so because prices kept on going up, okay, so at first things were like 100, could cost you $100 maybe to buy bread, and then it started costing $1,000 to buy bread, then it started costing $1 million to buy bread, and then it started costing $500 million to buy one loaf of bread. Okay, prices just kept going up so fast, it was very hard to keep track. Okay, it was very, very hard to keep track, and people were walking around with stacks of money, and money that you can't put in your pocket, so people had to carry plastic bags and and plastic bags, suitcases with money, so that they could do things with it. Just give us 2 seconds, guys. Anyway, so then the next thing, people had to have all these large sums of money to do this. So to accommodate these large sums of money that people were carrying, but that money wasn't going to buy you much. Okay. So to accommodate these large sums of money, the government started printing banknotes. Okay. The government started printing banknotes, and those banknotes are what we have here. So so first, like I was saying, it became a circus. Really, you at first you had like reasonable notes, like $20 notes. This was at the beginning of the inflation, I guess. The first year, $20 notes, and and then we went up. You started having you're talking $5,000 notes, and we thought, oh wow, what an interesting thing to have a $5,000 notes. And then, can you believe having a $250 million note? That's how crazy things went. Okay, we held $50,000 notes, $10,000 notes. All these pictures are money pictures. Okay, this is real. It's not real money. This is the fake money we were using as though it's real in Zimbabwe, right? Um, can you can you think of holding $100 trillion? $100 trillion. Okay, that's what it was in Zimbabwe. It was all crazy, and these numbers went so high. Um, these numbers went so high. The government decided, okay, these numbers are too high. We can't have these numbers. People can't keep track of these numbers. So let's just pretend, let's tell everyone we're going to divide whatever money they have by 4 zeros or by $10,000. And then everything will come, all the prices will sort of kind of come down for a little while, and we'll print money to reflect that. So just to explain that, let's say you had $10,000 in your account. The government was now saying you need to say you have $1 in your account, and we'll print you money that's $1, and we'll get rid of that. All those old notes that you were using, we're getting rid of them, and we're now going to print new notes. And everyone who has $10,000 will get a $1 note, and everyone who has $1,000,000, that would be divided by 4. And how many millions would you have? Would you have $10? I can't remember. Yeah, I think you'd have $100. Yeah, then you'd have $100 um if you had $1,000,000. So you'd get $100 note. That's what the government was basically doing. And they printed new money to reflect this. New money was printed to reflect this new money system, right? That the government had invented there and then. It was so confusing. I remember talking to people at Solusi who were in the shops, and they were asking students to explain to them what the government is doing. And all we were doing was just basically explaining the mathematics. We didn't know what the government was doing. We're just telling them, look, if you've got $50,000 in your account, the government is now saying that's going to count as $5. If you're selling something for $50,000, you are now supposed to market $5, and no one is going to buy from you for $50,000, because that $50,000 they were using before is no longer money. You are now using the new notes, which will reflect as $5. So that was the way it worked, right? And what if you had money that was less than that? Like, what if you had $500? What if you had $1,000? Well, in that case, you were just wiped out. In that case, you were just wiped out. And it looks like my stream is not going live, but we'll see. We'll see. My wife says it's not going live anymore. Let's have a look. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's just keep going. So they did the inflation still went crazy after that. After, imagine after resetting to 1, and resetting everything to 1 by 10,000, right? So resetting the $10,000 back to $1. Imagine the inflation going crazy like the previous one, until you have to reset again. So the government did that a few times, right? And new monies would be printed to reflect that. So, but here there were some people who benefited. Like if you had a bank loan or a debt to the government or the city council or whatever it was, if you needed to pay them money, you didn't need to pay them so much anymore, because it didn't cost you because the debt, it didn't cost you that money to pay the debt. Let me explain. So let's say, for example, if you owed $50,000, right, and in 1998 you got a loan and you were owing $50,000, and according to your calculations, it was going to take you 20 years or 22 years to pay that money. So you'd have up until 2020 to pay that money. But by 2008 or 2005 even, you would have been able to pay it all off at once. Why? Because the government had inflated the money so much. So literally, you could pay. You people who had debts um, were benefiting from the inflation, right? But conversely, and that meant that big companies couldn't stay and they left. And that's big companies such as Unilever. That's the one that I can remember off the top of my head. And if you go to Bulawayo right now, you can see huge places of old industrial areas that closed down and left during that time. And if you put the on top of that, we had the land reform program, which was basically grab it all, it's all yours now. And we had the 50% ownership thing, like you need a Zimbabwean, an African Zimbabwean or something to own land or own things. They have to, whatever business, they have to own like 50% of it or something like that. So businesses started closing down and leaving. And so because all these things were happening, the city council didn't have money or services to do certain things such as repair roads. There was no more garbage collection. The roads were full of potholes. Everything was dying, including government departments, right? So like passports, I remember being waiting, right, at 3 a.m. I remember waiting at 3 a.m. to to buy to get a passport, to apply for a passport. Imagine sleeping at the passport office at 3 a.m. or being at the passport office at 3 a.m. only to be served at 11 a.m. Right? And I remember people whose parents had saved up money for them to go to uni, right? But because of the inflation, they no longer had any money to pay fees for their children, as if they were disorganized and um and look and unorganized people. But they were organized, just that the government had really screwed them over, right? Lots of uh people's savings were lost. So if you had money in the bank, let's say maybe you'd saved up $50,000 in Zim dollars, and like it was back in the day, it was a lot of money, right? Maybe it was equivalent to 5,000 or 100, whatever, one gold bullion or something. Um, but now it would mean nothing. It would mean absolutely nothing. That $50,000 wouldn't buy you like a copper coin, you know. So that's how bad it was. So people's savings were lost. If you had invested money in the stock market, it was all gone. So literally people were wiped out in terms of finances. So now let's go into the last bit that I needed to correct. So the author, okay, maybe the last thing which we need to add. So this got so bad, I didn't actually say this, but this got so bad that the government abandoned its own dollar, its own money. So Zimbabwe stopped using the Zim dollar, right? For I think 5 or 6 years, there was no longer Zim dollars because the inflation was so bad. People lost confidence in the money and they stopped it altogether, right? So that's how the story ends. So in the end, there was no longer any more Zim dollars, and people were now using foreign currency in Zimbabwe. We're now using US dollars, rands, other money from other places, pounds, but we're no longer using Zim dollars in Zimbabwe because the inflation had gotten so bad, they got rid of the money, right? And then the orthodox definition of inflation, here this part here, what's important is I need to explain that the orthodox definition of inflation is it's a measure of the average rise in prices, I guess, in an area or in a country, right? So hyperinflation would then be a sustained increase in prices of goods and services, like a hyper sustained increase in the prices of goods and services. That's what the general definition of inflation is. I do not subscribe to that definition of inflation. to that definition of inflation. I do not subscribe to it. I think it's not a very good definition. So if you watch my first video on the history of money, you understand why. So the way economists have different ways of calculating what the inflation is, what the inflation rate is. But yeah, that's the orthodox definition. If you watch my previous video, I definitely do not subscribe to that definition of inflation. But you can look at the different references I put in there. Those references will explain more, will give you different options of how to define inflation. I think my definition is more helpful, right? Right. So I prefer to say that inflation is stealing. Right? It's clever stealing. That's what it is, right? That's what it is. That's what I think it is. But sometimes it's not stealing. Sometimes it's because of a genuine increase or reduction in production. But mostly it's stealing. Okay, that's my opinion. Yeah. So don't forget, read the book, The Ethics of Money Production, available on YouTube for free. Read that book. So if you've got anything else that's interesting that happened to you during that inflation period, please send me an email. And thank you very much, guys. I will see you later. If this video didn't upload properly, we are going to do it again. Okay, we're going to do it again maybe tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.